A person wakes up and nothing feels wrong. The room is quiet. The day is waiting. But getting out of bed feels heavier than it should. And for most of history, no one would have called this depression. There has always been a feeling people struggle to explain. Not sadness exactly, something heavier. More of a slowing down of thought, of energy, a slowing down of hope. A sense that the world keeps moving and you somehow can't move with it. Today, we call it depression. But for most of human history, no one agreed on what it was or where it came from. This is before it had a name. I'm John. Quick note before we get into it. This podcast is about the history of mental health diagnoses. It's not medical advice. It's not therapy. It's not a diagnosis. So if you're worried about yourself or your child, please talk with a qualified professional. Our story today begins more than 2,000 years ago. Ancient Greek physicians believed health depended on a balance between four bodily fluids. There was blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Now, too much black bile, they believed, produced melancholia. Yeah, literally, black bile. And melancholia, it wasn't just a medical description. It was a way of understanding personality. And some individuals were thought to be more reflective if they had melancholia, more sensitive to suffering, more prone to philosophical thought. And in certain traditions, melancholy even carried this strange kind of prestige. The person who felt deeply might also be the person who observed deeply. So artists and poets and thinkers were sometimes described as having melancholic temperaments, capable of insight precisely because they were attuned to emotional complexity. But this idea was double-edged. Melancholy could be associated with wisdom or from a withdrawal of life. And in extreme cases, it can mean losing the ability to participate fully in daily responsibilities. Ancient physicians debated whether melancholia came from the body or the mind or the environment. But what mattered most was that they recognized a persistent state. This was something different than ordinary sadness. It was a heaviness that lingered. In monastic communities, a condition called acedia was described. It was sometimes translated as spiritual listlessness. So a monk might lose motivation to pray or work, even just engage with communal life. And this experience, they would describe it, could include exhaustion, hopelessness, or a sense that effort no longer mattered. And because the framework was spiritual, the response of the behavior was also spiritual. What does that mean? It means discipline, reflection, confession. So what we might now interpret as depressive symptoms were often treated as struggles of faith or purpose. And again, the internal experience was completely real, but this explanation and this response was shaped by the worldview of the time. Fast forward, and by the late 19th century, there were physicians now beginning to describe something they believed was uniquely modern. They called it neurasthenia, nervous exhaustion. So patients reported constant fatigue and difficulty concentrating, emotional fragility. And these patients, many were professionals. They were teachers and clerks and even doctors, navigating increasingly fast-paced urban environments. Railroads were connecting cities. Telegraphs accelerated communication. Expectations around productivity intensified. And some doctors even were arguing that modern civilization itself was placing unprecedented strain on the human nervous system, something we still argue about today. And treatment recommendations could include rest or time away from work, structured routines, and the whole assumption was that the mind, like the body, could become depleted, and that depletion could reshape mood. Now, this was a very important shift. Emotional suffering was no longer explained only through morality or temperament. Now the environment was entering the conversation. Then comes the 20th century. World wars exposed millions to trauma on an unprecedented scale. Soldiers returning home changed. They're restless. Others emotionally numb, unable to feel pleasure, unable to reconnect with ordinary life. And at times, depression overlaps with what we would now separate into trauma-related disorders. But again, language is struggling to keep up with the experience of the time. Was this grief, weakness, shock, exhaustion? Medicine begins slowly, recognizing that mood itself can be affected by biology, not just circumstance. When antidepressant medications began to emerge in the mid-20th century, they changed not only treatment, but theory. If mood could improve with medication, well, perhaps depression involved underlying biological mechanisms. And this idea of chemical imbalance started to gain traction. And for many people, this reframing reduced the shame. Depression could be understood as a health condition rather than some personal failure. And at the same time, this new framework also raised questions. Could complex human suffering be reduced to neurotransmitters? What about the social factors like isolation, loss, inequality? Were those now being overlooked? And some critics worried that ordinary grief or discouragement might become medicalized. Now others emphasized that untreated depression carried real risks and deserved serious intervention. And by the way, this debate continues today. So science is advancing, but interpretation remains shaped by culture. So how about as of now? We now understand depression as complex. Biology plays a role. So does environment, relationships, stress, trauma, meaning. But it's the history that reminds us something important. People experienced depression long before neuroscience explained it, before there was a diagnostic criteria, before medication. The experience came first. This explanation, whatever it is, followed. And across centuries, descriptions repeat. It's a person withdrawing from life, struggling to rise in the morning, feeling disconnected from things that once mattered. Different eras offered different explanations. Black bile, sin, nervous exhaustion, chemical imbalance. Each explanation reflected what society understood at the time, and really what it feared. So imagine a person sitting in a brightly lit office, and they're doing everything expected of them. They're meeting deadlines, responding politely, functioning. But inside, the effort required to complete ordinary tasks feels immense. They begin to wonder whether something is wrong with them or whether this is simply what adulthood feels like. Across centuries, individuals have asked similar questions, using whatever language was available at the time. Melancholy, exhaustion, burnout, depression. The words change. The search for understanding continues. Depression did not suddenly appear in modern life. What changed was how we interpreted the suffering. Whether we saw it as a character flaw, spirit change, health issue. In future episodes, we're going to continue exploring how diagnoses evolved and how the language we use shapes the way people understand their own experiences. So I hope you'll continue listening as we explore the stories behind the labels. This is Before It Had a Name. I'm John. This podcast produced by Doug Wild.